Welcome to The Late Show on Wednesday the 1st of November. This programme will be focusing on an exposure of Hamas. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, said that the attacks of the 7th of October did not happen in a vacuum. Well, we are going to explain and unpack that tonight because Hamas is the reason. There are other reasons, but Hamas is the prime reason for that terrible, terrible attack. The worst terrorist attack in living memory and worst massacre of the Jews since the Holocaust. We're going to interview an Israeli diplomat, Dan Shaham, who I spoke to earlier. And you can email in, but we'll be reading your emails after this extensive interview where we go into quite a lot of detail of the anti-Semitism of Hamas, the structure of Hamas, the financing of Hamas, the tunnels of Hamas, the shooting of rockets from civilian areas by Hamas, the sighting of their rocket launchers in civilian areas, beside hospitals, mosques, schools, hospitals. We have to expose the evil of Hamas and not allow their apologists in the West to somehow sanitize their ideology and objectives. Now, please do send in your emails and texts. The system will be operational during the whole of the interview, and I will then come back and we can interact and reflect on how you view the comments of Dan Shaham. A little bit of background. Dan has done extensive work around the world, both in the UK, Europe, Africa, and crucially in the Middle East in support of peace. He has extensive experience, but I felt today we should start with reflecting on the root causes of this conflict. So please do email in and text. As I've said, you'll see it come up on your screen live at revelationtv.com and the text number on your screen. Let's just watch this interview that was recorded earlier with Dr. Dan Shaham. I'm joined now by Dan Shaham. I've known Dan for many years. He used to be stationed and head up as Director of Public Affairs at the Israel Embassy in London. He's been the Consul General in Germany and Munich and Ambassador to Southern African countries. But what's of great interest is Dan's involvement in the Abraham Accords and the role he played in the United Arab Emirates. Dan, welcome to The Late Show.
Shalom team. Shalom to you and all of you.
So good to see you. And of course, when we were last in contact in London, we had the second Intifada, and that was a terrible time. And, you know, our thoughts and our prayers are with you again in Israel. It's sad to be having to do programs at this time, but it's important for folks to know the truth.
Indeed. Unfortunately, we had a horrendous attack conducted against us on the 7th of October. And thank you for reaching out to bring some clarity into what brought about this thing, what are we dealing with, and what's the future is going to be for us in this region. So thank you very much.
Bless you. Dan, we have a number of evidential videos which we will play during this interview, but firstly we need to establish who is Hamas, because you may know that in the UK there are many who call Hamas their friends, chief among them Jeremy Corbyn, former leader of Her Majesty's opposition in our parliament, and there's a great ignorance of Hamas. So we're going to play a video called Who is Hamas? And then we can discuss it together.
Founded in 1987, Hamas is a terrorist organization which openly declares its intention to wipe Israel off the map. Here's how they have tried to further this goal over the years. Carrying out suicide bombs in restaurants, on buses, and in other public places. Carrying out terror attacks with guns and knives, kidnapping and murdering young Israelis, building terror tunnels from Gaza into Israel to attack and murder Israeli civilians, launching more than 20,000 rockets at Israel over the past 20 years. After Israel unilaterally withdrew from the Gaza Strip in 2005, Hamas violently took control of the area, oppressing the Palestinian people, limiting freedom of expression and religion, and indoctrinating Palestinian children to become martyrs. Hamas uses the resources of the Palestinian people to fund its terrorist activities instead of investing in the welfare of its citizens. Instead of building schools or hospitals or buying vaccines, Hamas uses its resources for rockets and underground terror tunnels. Hamas is almost entirely sponsored by the Iranian regime, who shares its goal of annihilating Israel. Hamas also uses the Palestinian population in Gaza as human shields, launching rocket attacks at Israel from civilian areas. Since Hamas seized control of the Gaza Strip, Gaza's Christian population has been persecuted and has almost entirely disappeared. Israel is facing a violent and dangerous terrorist organization that seeks its destruction. No country would tolerate this, and neither will Israel.
We just give credit to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel for that short video. Now, there's so much, Dan, that we can unpack,
Yes.
but I think we're trying to get to the essence of the issue. And Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, said, well, this October the 7th didn't happen in a vacuum, implying that, you know, the cause was Israel and the occupation. But we know enough now that, you know, the cause of the problem is Hamas itself. I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on that.
Yes, I think that you've hit the nail on the head. Hamas is not working towards any sort of political goal other than the full destruction of the Jewish people in Israel. That's their goal. And we've seen it very clearly. And they're attacking the question whether or not they're a terror organization after October 7th, I think, is not only redundant, but you need to be a total ignorant and an absolute audacious to try and claim that Hamas is anything but a terror organization. It is a cruel terror organization that rapes, maims, slaughters, and uses all of that cruelty in the most destructive of ways, not only towards Israeli civilians, but also towards Palestinian civilians as well. Namely, they are using Palestinian civilians. So whatever suffering is caused in Gaza, be it Corbyn or anybody else, they should make no mistake. Hamas benefits from it. So it's not that they are trying to promote the well-being of the Palestinian people or anything. They want to destroy Israel, and if it takes sacrificing each and every Palestinian, they will do that.
Absolutely. Dan, we have some other shorter videos. I don't know whether you remember 20 odd years ago, we used to attend the Parliamentary Committee Against Anti-Semitism, well, studying the rise of anti-Semitism in Britain, which has now gone off the scale. But there's a video just showing, you know, the Hamas brand of anti-Semitism. So we're going to play that video now. Dan, I'm sorry to even play such videos, but how do you feel as a Jew and as an Israeli when you see that the violence breaking out across Western capitals? And also it showed there in Germany, and having been Consul General there at the Israeli consulate in Munich, you know, what are your reflections on that?
This is a nightmare. It's a nightmare in the sense that not only that we need to deal with Hamas, and we will deal with Hamas, and we will defeat Hamas, but to have people in Europe, be it from the extreme left or any supporters of Hamas or anyone, thinking that to support Hamas is in any way a legitimate cause or a legitimate call is beyond beyond the pale in any way. To support and not to condemn what happened in October 7th, and to support Hamas and to go on chanting whatever slogans you're going into is to be something to look into. And for all those that are saying we are anti-Zionist, we are criticizing Israel for its actions, and all these kinds of nice statements, I think the time for that has come for them to reflect deeply into their actions and into their words, and who actually are they supporting. If in any way, shape, or form they're going out into the street after October 7th, this is pure and simple anti-Semitism. Pure and simple. And for many years, I've worked with people and groups that have, you know, were trying to differentiate themselves, and were looking for excuses or looking for a differentiating. After October 7th, after more than 3,000 terrorists go into a peace-seeking party and kibbutzim and slaughter men, women, and children, take over 230 hostages, babies, Holocaust survivors. Who does that? And worse than that, who supports that? Who in his right mind can support that or give any excuses for that? The excuses why they've done it and this.
Yeah, absolutely terrible.
Say enough is enough. And I think that has been a very brave stand as far as the British government and as far as supporters of Israel, Christians and Jews around the world, both physically in the streets and in the medias, that are saying this is the time. Never again is now. So whenever we wanted to say never again, it's now. This is the time when you can really tell who is what.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wearing a poppy, I don't know whether you can see it, Dan, which says, "Lest we forget," talking about those who lost their lives in the Second World War. And of course, during that time we faced the Nazi tyranny, but someone's pointed out that the difference with Hamas is that the Nazis tried to cover up their crimes, whereas Hamas and their supporters around the world celebrate their crimes. Now, I have another video that describes how Hamas is basically the Palestinian version of ISIS. Okay, that video, very short, but just showing the wicked indoctrination of children. And like you, Dan, I care very much for my own children, for the next generation, for educating children in the right way. As it says in Proverbs, train up a child in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it. Well, they're obviously training children from a very young age, and that must be a concern for the future. Because when we were together 20 odd years ago, these children were just, as it were, coming off the terrorist production line. And then, even then, we knew there's something seriously wrong with the Palestinian media and the Palestinian textbooks. But let's just keep identifying what the source of the problem is.
Well, as you rightly pointed out, the ideology and the indoctrination were single-mindedly to kill violently Jews and destroy Israel. It's not for a purpose of liberating something, it's for the purpose of destroying the state of Israel, the only democracy, because democracy and human rights, civil rights, women's rights, all of those things that we uphold as important are totally antagonistic to their point of view. And Judaism, a religion, any religion, by the way, they also persecuted Christians in Gaza. And just like ISIS persecuted everyone that did not adhere to their point of view, so did Hamas. So throughout time, anyone who was not following their strict understanding was eliminated, all the way from their political opponents to people with other beliefs. I'm not even talking about people with gays or lesbians in Gaza. All of those things were slowly but surely brought to an end in Gaza. And all of their, I would say, powers were to indoctrinate a new generation and to put all of the money that they have received into building a society which is geared just for that purpose. So they've taken the money and put it into tunnels rather than building schools. And this is what we see now. They lack this and that, but rockets, they have plenty. And they have underground infrastructure. And they are hiding behind their own civil population.
Yeah.
They are hiding and using their own civilian population, something which is totally against any basic practice, and of course against the laws of war. But to build your own headquarters underneath a hospital, knowing that if something will happen, the hospital is your shield to militants. The whole reversal of what we understand to be moral values, sanctifying life.
Dan, you've mentioned the positioning of their tunnels and their infrastructure beside hospitals, schools and mosques. Here we have a medical facility in Gaza which clearly shows the location of tunnel entrances in the vicinity, in the car parks, in the olive groves. You can see here now Hamas tunnels beside a mosque, educational campus, medical facilities, and in the built-up area beside a diplomatic building. So it's a real problem. And I just wonder, Dan, whether we show a video first of the actual Hamas tunnels themselves, and then we can discuss this more, and this problem really that it is the Hamas embedding themselves behind the civilian population as a human shield. So Dan, that was the video of the tunnels. It's quite interesting in the text. It mentioned how much money it costs for just 1 kilometer. Could you talk a little bit more about how extensive the network is, and maybe something about the money, because I know this is something the German government is concerned about?
I'll say the following. 18 years ago, we have totally moved out of Gaza. So everyone who's talking about an occupation of Gaza, Israel does not occupy 1 inch of Gaza, and has not left, and it's left it hoping that the Palestinians will create something that will benefit them and the entire region, something that will bring coexistence, economy, society that is thriving, and by that promoting even not only their current state of affair, but a better future for everyone. Of course, we were totally, devastatingly disappointed. They've taken Gaza and made it into the worst possible military, terroristic infrastructure, a base for operation against Israel.
Yeah, it's interesting that the media talk about it being a prison camp, but in effect, it's a Hamas-run prison camp. And,
exactly.
And they've had massive funding. I don't know what the figures are. You may be privy to more information on that, but the money that's been funneled through from Iran is eye-watering.
Yes, absolutely. So Gaza has a border with Egypt, an Arab country, and so there is no problem for them to create whatever communication lines or transfer lines, and people have been coming and going. And of course, into Israel. In the past, workers have come to Israel, thousands and thousands daily. Trade, trucks coming out of Gaza with goods coming out and goods coming in. We were trying to create some relevant coexistence. But as we realized, all of that was a deception. Hamas has used all of the money and all of the goodwill, both of Israel, but all the money that was sent from Europe also. A lot of money came from Europe. A lot of money came from Iran. A lot of money came from Qatar. And they've used all this money, and look where it got us.
And we're talking about hundreds of millions of euros, aren't we? We're talking about hundreds of millions of pounds, hundreds of millions of dollars, and money which could have been spent on improving the lives and the well-being of the Palestinian people.
Again, and for anyone who is trying to argue differently, Israel provided electricity, and there has been trade and goods and workers and people coming into Israel to work. All of that has been not only as a cover-up, but as a cynical brutal use of the civilian agenda to promote the terrorist agenda. So terror of Hamas is not for a political cause, it's the other way around. And that's why I think it is so difficult for us to comprehend that the political, the economics, the social infrastructures are being abused for the terror and the destruction of Israel, not the other way around. Terror is not their means, but it's their goal. So it's not that they want to liberate in order to improve their lives or none of that. So in that sense, that agenda of ISIS that looked into demolishing societies that were not in line with their agenda, be it the Yazidis or the Christians of Iraq, and bringing people into some sort of a medieval agenda of repression, of no civil or human rights, that was becoming a reality. And we were, of course, in the forefront of that. So whatever it is that we are suffering, I wish to no one.
We've just got one other video. We'll play a video at the end, which will bring it really home to us. But we'll show the short video of where Hamas is firing the rockets from. Dan, it's like a stroboscope. That it's one flash after another flash after another flash, and those are basically directed at Israel, apart from those that misfire. We maybe could talk about that as well, how the media completely misreported the misfiring of a rocket recently on a Palestinian hospital as though it was an Israeli attack.
Yes. So you could see it very clearly. The Hamas could use open areas that are abundant in Gaza in order not to put any civilian in danger. They don't do that. They put their civilian population in full danger. And of course, they are firing at civilian population in Israel. For anyone who's not thinking that that's a terror organization, they need to have their head examined. But to all means and purposes, at this point of time, they've used that hospital and they've misfired. And in the beginning, everybody, of course, jumped and said, oh, Israel did that. And we said, actually, here's the evidence. And I think a lot of people had to really examine that they believe Hamas propaganda immediately and take it at face value. No matter what numbers they come up with, no matter what fingers they're pointing at Israel, they immediately would be sort of taken as the truth. If we say it, oh, Israeli sources are claiming. No, we're not claiming. So when we are looking into a responsible journalism, and I think that the BBC has started understanding that there is a problem. And unless they will look into their problem and solve it, they are doing a disservice to their viewers.
Yes, so from our perspective, Dan,
we've given up on trying to have somebody fighting our corner, but as a basic service to the truth.
Yes, I know. From our perspective, you know, it wasn't just the BBC, although they are the chief offenders because they're our national broadcaster. Exactly. If I could just comment, you would know this and you're involved with public affairs, but it was presented in our newspapers as an attack. So as soon as you hear attack, you think Israel. It was also presented with numbers inflated to 800, and these were published in our daily newspapers, even though all analysts looked at it and said that, you know, it couldn't possibly have been on that scale. They had this what was the remains of a Hamas rockets, that obviously the propellants would have set off the car park. And then it was sad to see the BBC verify, which is, they pride themselves in verifying the facts, not even owning up to the error in the reporting.
And others. So to all me, from our perspective at this point of time, and the woman that was kidnapped and released recently spoke about her walking through kilometers of tunnels. And I assume that they have put down, as you've shown, a web of tunnels underneath the city of Gaza, headquarter under the Shafia hospital and in other places. And we will need to deal with that. And we have said it very clearly, and people should have come out. And the people of Gaza can leave to the south and be safe and get humanitarian help. Hundreds of trucks are coming in with food and whatever needs they have, medicine. But they need to leave. And if they do not leave, because Hamas does not let them, Hamas is blocking them from leaving because they need the civilian population to protect them. When was the last time you saw a soldier that is needing a civilian to protect them? That's a shame. To all means and purposes, Israel will need to deal with those tunnels. And it's within civilian population areas, and we never take aim at civilians. But we are obeying the rules of law of war, the Geneva Convention, and if within a civilian context, an army, a terror organization is hiding, there is a right to go after them, and we will go after the terrorist organization Hamas. We are committed to dismantle this evil terror organization.
Okay, Dan. The context, the second aspect of the objective for Israel to enter into Gaza is to try and rescue the hostages, the tragedy of so many hostages who are now buried, possibly in the tunnels or in unknown houses around Gaza. I think we should play this short video just to give us the context, and then we'll have some closing remarks from you.
Patiently waiting each day that goes by, staring out windows at stars in the sky, imagining one day I'll be one of them, but patiently waiting till then.
I heard a radio broadcast this morning with one of the families of the hostages, and it ended with, it brought me to tears, where they said, could we please just say a few words in case our family who are kidnapped, in case they can hear this broadcast. And it was very moving, just a direct message, family to family, that we're praying for you, and we're hoping that you'll return safely and stay strong. Dan, just in a few closing comments, could you just talk about how important it is for Israel to try and recover these dear ones, and children, elderly, women, and others?
There is nothing more important for us than bringing them back to safety as soon as possible. And every decent human being at this point of time needs to write to their governments and to their elected officials and say, this is a must. If there ever was a worthy cause, this is a worthy cause. So I'm urging the people that are viewing this broadcast and this program, and thank you very much for allowing us to speak about what happened and what brought about this thing, and we will talk further. But I want to quote from a prophet, Prophet Isaiah. They that war against thee shall be as nothing, and as a thing of naught. For I, the Lord, the God, will hold thy right hand, saying to thee, fear not, I will help thee. We are committed to go forth, to defend ourselves, to bring back our people from the hostage that they are held in the hands of this terror organization, and dismantle it once and for all. And if anybody thinks that they will try and interfere, open a second front like the Houthis or Hezbollah, they will not be able to deter us, intimidate us. We have faith. We've come and we have built a wonderful state and wonderful relations between Christians and Muslims and Jews in Israel. So Arabs, Israelis do not identify with these things. And a lot of Arab countries are not in that favor, and Muslim countries are opposed. So we do not see it as something that we want to put, sort of a stigma on this or in that. No, we are a peace-seeking country. But when they rise up against us, we will know how to defend ourselves. We were caught by surprise, but not again.
Bless you, Dan. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us today.
Thank you, and shalom. Thank
Shalom.
you, and shalom from Jerusalem. All the best.
That was recorded a little earlier today with Dan Shaham, and thank you very much all of the emails and texts that have come in. I'll read some of them out, and then we can talk more about. We've got about 20 minutes left, so there's still time if you want to email in. This is an anonymous text. Lord, please restore the Holy Land to your people, the Jews, whom you granted the land to. Lord, please bring victory to Israel. Lord, please bring peace to Israel. Lord, please bring peace to Ukraine in Jesus' name. Thank you for that text. Eddie writes, anyone who wonders why the Israeli-Palestinian conflict seems immune to any solution should look into what the Holy Book of Islam says about the Jews. Reading the Quran, Hamas will learn that the Jews are the fiercest enemies of the Muslims. That's in the Surah 582. It is hard to see how Hamas can possibly view the Jews worthy of even the most basic human respect. Thank you, Eddie. You don't always, but you've put in brackets atheist and pro-Israel. It is a significant problem, Eddie, which we're facing. And it's going to take some very brave Muslim leaders to reject, especially in the contemporary context, to totally reject these verses that are energizing the terrorists. Dylan writes, Tim, thanks for your writing in the new Our Times magazine. It has had a great effect on me. Leslie asked me if I'd write, and so in the center pages on the two sides, I make a few comments about Israel being the apple of God's eye. And you can get, if you don't have it already, you can get the Our Times from via the office. Paul and Ruth writes, good evening, Tim. God bless you all. This evil has to be stamped out completely. No one should be subjected to this. Enough is enough. The Holocaust was and still is a terrible event. Never again. We stand with Israel. Paul and Ruth. I remember Yitzhak Rabin when he shook hands with Arafat on the lawn of the White House with Bill Clinton, and he said, enough of blood and tears. Unfortunately, he made a deal with Arafat, which Arafat reneged on, and even Bill Clinton said Arafat just walked away from a deal. And of course, behind Arafat, we now see there was Hamas lurking in the shadows. From Doreen, thank you for exposing the truth of Hamas and their wicked agenda. What really gets my blood boiling is the BBC, making it look like Israel are at fault because of the need to go into Gaza to stop these atrocities happening. Also, why aren't these Hamas demonstrators in the London streets not being arrested? They're clearly agreeing with this murderous agenda to continue. By the way, Doreen, it's blatant racism, and if there's any other form of racism, even you see it on a tube or on the streets, the police jump on it. Why are they not dealing with this virulent racism, which it has this special element of anti-Semitism? It's a very serious blot on a stain on our police and our law-keeping forces in England. They're clearly agreeing with this murderous agenda. But an innocent woman, this is the point you make, praying outside an abortion clinic gets arrested. Where's the mind of this government? If they don't stop this now, we will see murders in our own streets and churches. It must be stopped now, before it's too late. Israel are innocent, and I pray for them, that God will come through and stop this horror. God bless you for this program. Unfortunately, not the ordinary man in the street will see this. I think you mean the ordinary man in the street won't see it, and it's really tragic. By the way, you mentioned the BBC, and I couldn't believe it in the stream today from the news. What's his name? Jeremy Bowen. Jeremy Bowen wrote this article, which is on the BBC website, saying that the hostages were about to be released and then Israel invaded Gaza. It was just completely twisted to suggest that Hamas were about to release the Israeli hostages. Where's your evidence, Jeremy Bowen? I nearly said Jeremy Corbyn. Sorry about that. Rosemary writes, good evening. Thanks for showing this. It's hard to watch. I feel sick that people here in the UK are so vicious and appalling. I don't want these people here. I'm ashamed that the governments past and present have allowed these evil people to benefit from a free country like ours. Do you know, Omar Bakri, Mohammed and Anjem Chowdhury used to gloat about how they could have multiple wives and the British benefit system would pay for them as single parents. How can they? And when will they wake up and remove these evil people? I have some good Muslim acquaintances who are peaceful, but here in Birmingham, they are few and far between. Make no mistake, I stand with Israel. I'm loud about it. I'm 72 and disabled. What can they do to me? Thanks again for all the truth you are getting out. That's from Rose. And Myra, thank you everyone, by the way, who's emailed and written in on this important subject. I was born in 1936. My father was in a reserved occupation. We went to the cinema twice a week. I remember the first films taken by the US Army as they entered a concentration camp, and for the first time we saw the Jewish people who had suffered there. I was expecting the prisoners to leap up and welcome their saviors and shout out to them. But the main picture I remember was a thin man, an extremely thin man, very white, who sat by the roadside, draped in dirty rags. He sat with his elbows on his knees, very quiet, staring at the US soldiers. After a while, the latter stopped calling out to them. All these immobile men staring at them had the same effect on them as they had on me. The cinema was silent too, except for people sobbing. When I got home, I questioned my parents, and they answered me as best they could. They brought home newspapers in the following days to get more information. We discussed it freely. In the ensuing years, when I hear people who have been treated as the Holocaust victims were, I always see in my mind's eye that white, skeletal man sitting helplessly at the side of the road. I pray daily for any who are treated so badly. May the world recognize what is happening now. Every blessing. Thank you very much, Myra, for writing that. Mr. M writes, Sky TV was also fooled to thinking that Israel are the villains. Not many believe that Hamas are killing their own people. Wake up and smell the coffee. Glenda writes, I'm so upset about even Christians saying that Israel is killing civilians. If I try to stand up for Israel, it seems as if my words are falling on deaf ears. Yeah, I totally agree. I've had exactly the same experience, Glenda. I find it very difficult to keep my cool, even in a church building. I don't know what else to do. Praying for the peace of Jerusalem and for God's supernatural protection over Israel. And thank you for standing with God's chosen people. God bless you. Pat, Israel must put earplugs on and just keep going. This world has lost its mind. God will give Israel a victory, no doubt. Next text is anonymous. Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 clearly warns us that the modern day white trespassers are not who they claim to be, and those professing Christians that support them are falling away into the hands of the enemy, warned about in 2 Thessalonians 2. Mario, peace. Hamas could save the Palestinian lives by saying sorry to Israel and laying down their arms. Peace and, which is exactly what they're asking Israel to do. Peace and prosperity could easily be restored in the region if Hamas does the following. Return the hostages, say sorry for the horrific killing of innocent Jews on the 7th of October, stop firing rockets into Israel, lay down their arms, participate in dialogue with all the parties concerned to bring about peace and prosperity to Israel and Palestine. By the way, we'll be talking to Dan Shaham again in the future about his peacemaking efforts and how he's been building bridges with Arab countries over science and technology and renewable energy. It's an amazing story which led to the Abraham Peace Accords, starting with the United Arab Emirates. And then the final point you make, Mario, is why are the media and Arab leaders condemning Israel and not advising Hamas to stop their terror? Of course, it's been said before, but if Hamas did put down their weapons, Mario, as you say, there'd be peace tomorrow. If Israel put down their weapons, they'd be slaughtered. Now, I'm going to read a few more emails and texts in a minute, but I wanted just to highlight that tomorrow will be the anniversary of the Balfour Declaration being published. It was actually formulated on the 31st of October. On the 2nd of November in 1917, an agreement was made with the Jewish community. A declaration was handed, addressed to Lord Rothschild, handed to Chaim Weizmann, who was the first president of the State of Israel. And I want to just show you the map of the mandates, because this shows you what was actually agreed to be given as a homeland for the Jewish people. And what you can see there is down the middle, the line is the River Jordan. It goes down from the Galilee at the top, through the Dead Sea, right down to Eilat at the Red Sea. Well, can you see what I can see? Which is that Israel is on the left of the River Jordan, and on the right is all the land which was actually earmarked for Israel during in the Balfour Declaration. So we might be discussing that tomorrow morning on our mornings. Alistair will be joining me, and I think that it is important to remember how much land Israel has been prepared to give for the sake of peace. It's a very stark map there. And by the way, that map, large though it is, the British Mandate of Palestine, as it was called, is much smaller than the land that was given to Abraham from the river to Euphrates all the way across to the Mediterranean. Some of the ones shouting hatred against the Jews have been arrested. We have a text saying that. That is true, but hundreds and hundreds have been shouting hatred and waving jihad banners, and the police have excused themselves by saying, oh, we thought they were just, Islamic rather than actually jihadi. This is from Susan. Thank you for tonight's programme. I've written 3 times to the government, my MP, but still they allow these heinous marches to go ahead. I'm furious that we have a government that does not govern. I don't know what else to do. I'm praying as others are, but people are so full of demonic hatred, you wonder where it is all going. God bless you and yours. Susan, thank you. Absolutely, it's a very serious problem, and of course, if you were to go out on the streets supporting Israel, you have to watch out, because I don't think the police would. I don't think the police would have the resources to protect you. Of course, there was an Israel rally, bring them home in Trafalgar Square, but it's always been a problem. The Jewish people are not violent street protesters, calling for death to the Arabs. It's a wonderful community, the Jewish community in London, and they need all the support they can get from Christians around the country, especially writing to MPs, by the way, because the Jewish communities are generally concentrated in a few, apart from London and Manchester and Leeds, there are a few concentrated Jewish communities. They don't have access to members of parliament as Christians do, watching this programme from around the country. So please do use your democratic right, exercise your democratic duty, and bring your members of parliament to account so that they might bring the government to account and bring the law enforcing agencies to account. Michael writes, Christian Zionism versus Hamas. I'm appalled by this network. None of you have any empathy for the Palestinian Christians. I hear only hatred for everyone but Jews. It's disgusting. There is no dual theology, and every Jews need to acknowledge Jesus Christ as Lord and Saviour before having any benefit of the covenant, including Christians. You're not helping the Jews by keeping them as Jews. You need to tell them they are wrong for genocide straight before our faces, and you Christians are allowing it and saying that you are believing in Christ Jesus. It is written in the Word of God that if you allow someone to sin and allow them to continue in sin without saying anything to them, you are also a partaker of their sins. Of all these children in Palestine, their blood is upon this network, Revelation TV. Well, we read out even emails that distort where we're coming from. If you watch the programs that are broadcast, not least the Son of Hamas, you will see that there is a perspective of Palestinian Christians. Of course, I've had a lot of experience, especially 20 years ago when I was reporting from the Middle East, meeting Palestinian Christians, and to be quite frank, they're too fearful to say anything against Hamas or Islamic Jihad, and often they are forced into a kind of a dimitude, a dhimmi mentality where they have to speak well of their oppressors and speak badly towards their liberators who are Israel. And I'm praying that the Palestinian people will be liberated, and I've been on record many times, they'll be liberated from the wicked tyrants who are running Hamas and even the gangsters running the Palestinian Authority. I agree there are many Palestinian Christians who need our prayers. They've been terribly oppressed over recent years, especially since the so-called Oslo peace process. This is from Stephen. I'd like to thank Revelation TV, especially Our Mornings, for the information on a book by Bridget Gabrielle called Because They Hate. It's so damning of the Islamic ideology of how they treat anybody who is not of Islam. I've just bought the book. The Jew, Christian or any other person or religion are called infidels. We can be murdered, beaten, beheaded, jailed, etc., and it's glorified by their followers. Anita, it's lovely to see you. I'm sickened by what I'm seeing on TV and online. Today, someone I know well here, a Christian but pro-Palestine, questioned how I can be pro-Israel. Apparently, if all these people are protesting against Israel, then I must think I know better than them, which of course I can't. I just want to make another comment, Michael. It is a bit of a blood libel against Revelation TV to suggest that we're responsible for the actions of Hamas and this Hamas-triggered war. It has to be said, and you cannot equivocate and you cannot create a moral equivalence, let alone suggest that somehow Israel, as the firefighter, is more culpable than the arsonists who have lit this fire. It does upset me, and I hope maybe we'll have more opportunity when the dust settles to actually engage in debate and properly establish a Christian position on this subject. Sorry if I haven't read all your emails out. Please do email in tomorrow morning. I can see about half a dozen more texts and emails coming in. By the way, if they'd have come in earlier, I would have made less comments on the previous email. So I apologise to those that I haven't been able to read out. Mark just says, make no mistake, Satan hates the Jewish people, but our God is greater and we must stand with the Jewish people. Please do read the very short article, a few hundred words, in the Our Times, where I talk about Israel being the apple of God's eye and how much distortion there is in the media. I've seen it firsthand. I'm not making it up. I think it was so important for us to speak with Dan Shaham today and expose the root cause of this current war, which is Hamas and hatred of the Jewish people. So, as Nick Ross would say, please don't have nightmares, and God bless you. We'll see you soon.